Hello, everyone. My name is Raven. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Rainbow Veteran. Today's episode is a little bit later than I would like because I'm going to be talking about the Unite4Vets, Unite for America rally that I was at DC on the 6th, a week ago. And I want to say, I wanted to try to get it right after everything happened, but unfortunately, due to recovery time, going to other rallies to continue the work I did on the 6th, and then some equipment issues, that this episode came out later than I wanted. So you may have noticed the audio sounds different. That is because I am not using my podcast equipment because my setup that I have for my microphone got chewed on by my cats. Luckily, it wasn't plugged in, but because of that, I'm having to go to these kind of shirt clip microphones that you see a lot of people on TikTok are using. I use this when I'm on the go, going to different events. But it is a little bit different, so the audio quality may sound a bit different. It sounds louder. I don't know if it's clearer, and I'm not going to know that until post-production, but I want to be very honest about what's going on. Hopefully here soon, when I get my next paycheck from the VA, I'm going to get an upgrade to my equipment, and so more routine quality control will be going forward with audio. That being said, I am still carrying the task that we were given at the end of Unite4Vets, which I will be referring to the whole thing as Unite4Vets throughout the rest of the show, which is to come together to advocate not just for our fellow veterans, but for our communities in our area. I recently went to a union rally in Harrisburg, PA, the capital of the state, to advocate for union jobs, specifically with a group called Veterans Power America. They are a pro-green energy veteran organization, and we went to help advocate for union jobs, for green energy production areas, met with a lot of cool vets from different areas with that, including some of the folks who work for some of the organizations that were at the rally on the 6th. So I am going to talk about that. First, I am going to bring up the overview for it. So I was in a group chat with the rally coordinators and a lot of other content creators, talking about a lot of what we are planning to do to promote the event, but also some of the content we were going to make at the event. So it's really cool. And so I do want to talk about the overview of what the event was from the coordinators themselves, and kind of talk about what I saw. So I'm going to go into the overview and then go into what I saw. And then I'm also going to use my handwritten notes of who spoke at the event, because there was a lot of overlap of the messages. So on June 6, 2025, thousands of veterans, military family members, union members, and supporters gathered on the National Mall in DC for the Unite4Veterans, Unite for America rally. The event's goal was to talk about defending veterans' benefits, workers' rights, and democracy, featuring powerful speeches from veterans, their family members, union leaders, and national figures. It included live musical performance by Dropkick Murphy and other artists, which was an amazing show. It honored the legacy of the Bonus Army, who marched on Washington, D.C. in 1932 to demand the benefits that they were promised for taking part of the First World War. And it was broadcast nationwide through a live stream, making it accessible for supporters across the country. And it wasn't just on DC. There were across the country at least 50 major cities that were taking part of this rally in their own way. The key issues were protecting veterans' benefits, assuring access to health care, disability compensation, education, and housing for those who have served and their families, protect veterans and military families' jobs and public services, defending the rights of veterans in the federal workforce, who represent nearly a third of all the federal employees, as well as military family members, uphold the Constitution and the American ideal. As us veterans, we swore an oath to defend the Constitution, and this event reaffirmed that commitment. I did have a poem that I am going to talk about and kind of just bring up because I feel like it's a really good way to kind of continue that conversation. The key principles were this was a nonpartisan, pro-veteran, pro-democracy event. So everybody across the political spectrum was there. It was an inclusive event that aligned with the rally's mission. And it was an event for solidarity for not just in DC, but local non-official partners, expressions, and support of the main event. So this event was nearly 4.5 hours long, and I set up was around 10 o'clock, and my group who carpooled from Pittsburgh, we ended up there around 11:30 noonish, and then we left when it all wrapped up around 6:30, 7 o'clock. So we were there for a good while, and it was hot. The humidity was there, really high, hot weather, like high 80s, low 90s with like an 80% or so humidity rating. It was really hot. Thankfully, the folks who organized the event made sure that there was cooling tents, there was ADA seating, there were people going through the crowds, even though ones in the shade off the side, and making sure everybody was hydrated. I did my best to stay hydrated, but it's a little hard to do that when you're in the heat. I was putting as much water as I was losing through my sweat that day. So I did get heat exhaustion. I took a little bit to recover from, but it was so worth it. It was so worth it for the event. So the show started with a performance. It was a pre-show start, but it was a performance by Paul Giannicola from Punky Brewster with Joe P from, I believe it was Valor Media. I didn't quite catch where he was from, but I want to say it was Valor Media, as well as 40 Anderson, a combat veteran who learned how to play the banjo to help with his traumatic brain injury, and now uses that skill he developed to sing songs about issues he sees. Let's see here. The event was really, really good. So the heart of the event was pretty much, we shouldn't be cutting jobs from the VA willy-nilly, especially when a lot of these jobs support the doctors and nurses, and even some of the doctors and nurses are losing their jobs. Therapists are getting affected. The suicide hotline has been affected, and it's just been a whole heap of trouble for everybody involved with the VA as a work staff, and then it's just a huge issue for the service members who have had issues trying to get their care through the VA. I've talked about how I've already lost care on the show, but a lot of folks have talked more in depth about it, and even had some like nurses and doctors who worked or working at the VA, not representing the VA, but like sharing as their own personal concerns as a private citizen. So I do have some notes here. I'm going to be talking about them real fast. So if you do hear rustling through the microphone of paper, this is pretty much what it's from. So the event started with this amazing video narrated by Mark Hamill that honored the legacy of the bonus army that Unite4Vets was the continuation of. It was followed by Brad Owens, who played a metal rock version of the national anthem, which was freaking awesome. If you have ever seen Jimi Hendrix play the national anthem, it was more of a grungier style of that, but still had that same spirit, especially around the little solo he played. Let's see here. And I'm going to be honest, this might be a short episode, just because I don't know how long it's going to take me to read all of these little notes I have, and then talk about what's going to happen down the road. So I do apologize if this episode is short, but I want to be honest, I needed to get this information out there because it's going to be a continuation and kind of a light for down the road, where we have the No Kings protests across the country, which as of recording is going to be tomorrow. Where was I? Okay, so we had Will Attig, the executive director of Union Veterans Council, that talked about the importance of the rally itself, as well as held a moment of silence for those not only lost on D-Day, which was the day we were rallying, it was the anniversary of the D-Day invasion, but also those we lost in war and after they came home after that event. And then we had Everett Kelly president of the American Federation of Government Employees, or AFGE, which we did see not the president himself, but others representing in that rally we had in Harrisburg. And he ripped into the VA cuts and everything that Doug Collins is doing, coming from a government employee perspective. And it was really, really nice to see. A lot of people got very energetic in a very positive way, but you could feel the emotions of sadness and slight anger, but anger pushed towards something productive, not anger for anger's sake. He was followed by Westmoreland, who was the secretary treasurer of the National Nurses United. She's a registered nurse at the VA who spent years volunteering with her mother at the VA to help veterans, as well as she is a spouse of a veteran, as she continued the message that Everett Kelly was doing, but in a more nurse care perspective. This one was really cool. Lindsay Church, who I've been following for a little bit on the private side, who's the executive director and co-founder of Minority Veterans of America. She brought up a lot of the facts that cuts to care has already started with the removal of gender-affirming care at the VA, and it's just a sign when we're attacking, like, as a country, when we attack our minority veterans as service members, it's just a step in what's going to happen to the majority of veterans as service members. Brought up the civil rights leaders of naval ships having their names removed. Ships like Harvey Milk, Harriet Tubman, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and many more are having their names replaced by Pete Hegseth. And thanks to Hegseth and Trump, we're also losing transgender service members. Literally what I talked about on the last episode, this horrible bigoted-based movement that has no grounds in actual scientific proof. And a politician called him out on that recently in the committee. I want to say it was as of recording yesterday or the day before, and she said there were women, and then the moment she revealed they were trans, he had a 180 and got really pissed off. Just this shows how bigoted this asshole is. Let's see. Oscar L. Williams Jr., a Vietnam veteran and the second executive vice president of AFGE, spoke about his service and what it's like to be a veteran worker in government and what it's like to potentially have someone come for your job. Dr. Kylene Hunter, who's a Marine Corps veteran and CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, talked about the fights they have done. They were a big advocate for the removal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the PACT Acts, and many other pro-veteran, pro-service member movements, as well as trying to help get the promise of the Iraqis and the Afghanistan people who helped us fight the terrorists while we were overseas. I'm trying to help them get home, or I shouldn't say home, but like get over here somewhere safe and a path to citizenship that they were promised, because they went against the terrorist organizations, knowing that they're putting their life on the line. Let's see where else. Cecil Roberts, president of the United Mine Workers of America, also a Vietnam veteran. He was huge. He had a fire lit under him. You could tell he's been doing public speaking for decades. Older gentleman, obviously, but like passionate and very charismatic in how he delivered his speeches, and talking about, again, just like many others, talking about the cuts to the VA, but gave a very good perspective of some of the issues also going around today. Here's one that was really good. Dr. Matt Stevenson, who's a VA primary care doctor, he's one of the folks that works at the VA, but even very poignantly stated that he does not represent the VA, but he is a concerned citizen who just happens to work at the VA. And the horror stories he has heard of concerns from veterans at his hospital, some of the concerns that he has seen from his fellow healthcare professionals, and it's been a shit show. I'm not gonna lie. Then Dropkick Murphys played. They were awesome. They played their new songs, "Who Will Stand With Us," which was really great. They played a song which had the archives of an unfinished Woody Guthrie song, which was really good, because for those of you who don't know folk or country music, Woody Guthrie was a very big pro freedoms kind of person. He was very anti-fascist, pro-veteran, pro-union, pro-protest kind of guy. Like he had on his guitar, "This machine kills fascists." So he was a big advocate with his music and everything. So to hear a band that I grew up listening to, Dropkick Murphys, who are very pro everything that Guthrie was, with the musician that my grandfather introduced me to, it was very into my bones ingrained and kind of lit a fire under my ass. And then we had Carlos Alvarez, founder of American Opposition, Sean Van Diver, who was part of Afghan evac, does something similar to Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Their organization specifically focuses on the promise of helping those who fought with us over in Afghanistan to get their citizenship here in America. We had Senator Tammy Duckworth, who, for those of you who don't know, she's a National Guard veteran who was a Black Hawk pilot and lost both her legs in a horrific crash. And the fact that she not only stood there and actually helped people in a political sense, but she stood there and talked about the horrible issues going on with these VA cuts. And then we had Rear Admiral retired Mike Smith, president of the National Security Leaders for America. This organization is a lot of former retired high-level officers like admirals, generals, no idea what the other branches do, but there were a lot of like former veterans who work at national security positions. Then we had Elizabeth Jameson, who is a Navy brat and then a Navy spouse, who talked about the family side of service members and their care, and then when they transition into veterans, what that care looks like. Kayla Williams, who's an Army vet or for VA OPIA, who talked about these cuts in a lot more technical level. We had Kevin Meggett, a Navy veteran and commander of the Bronx chapter for the National Association for Black Veterans. And he talked about kind of continuing what Lindsay Church was talking about, but more of the specific issues going along with the removal of Black military history and the removal of some of the care and the weaponization of racism within the VA. Shernice Mundell, Air Force vet and former federal healthcare and insurance specialist. I believe she was one of the personnel who lost her job with the recent cuts. Like they just didn't tell her till she walked into the office. And if I remember correctly, she is currently running for something, but I don't have it in my notes, so I do apologize for that. I will have the link to the live show, the YouTube link for this in my show notes because I think it's very important to have, because you can actually listen and watch the entire live stream and actually hear these people that I'm talking about and their voices in a lot more detail. Tim Hauser, Air Force veteran and founder of the Veteran Assurance Network. Chris Goldsmith and Chris Purdy, both members of the Find Out podcast, I believe, who also both worked on getting this event started and kicked off to the ground. Both are Army vets. Chris Purdy is a National Guard vet specifically. Chris Goldsmith, you may also know him on TikTok for his Veterans Fighting Fascism and Task Force Butler work. I've worked with him on common defense stuff before in the past. Chris Purdy is also the founder of the Chamberlain Network. Then we had here from Pennsylvania, Representative Connor Lamb, who's I don't know if he's still in the district, but his office is like a good 15-minute walk from where I live. I just happen to be in a different district. He is also a Marine Corps veteran. And we had Adam Kinzinger, former representative from Illinois. He's also a National Guard vet. And to wrap up everything, Fred Wellman of Midas Touch, who's also an Army veteran, wrapped up the event and talked about the importance of continuing the spirit of what this event was, continue to advocate, continue to go to events that champion veterans and our families and our service members, and champion events for the rest of America. And because right now we're in a big pivotal point. I mean, the No Kings protest rally is hitting pretty much every major city or damn near across the country. It is going to be this massive event, and it's going to happen rain or shine. I know it's going to rain here. I know it's going to rain in DC, and I want to talk about that event. We're going to do it after I recover from that event, because I think I'm going to need some recovery time from that as well. But definitely keep up the work, keep advocating for your community. Even if you don't know any veterans or service members, please continue to advocate for us. But continue, for more than anything, continue to advocate for your fellow neighbors, your family, your community leaders, and the youngest in your community as well. Everything going on right now is just horrible. We have ICE illegally detaining people on their way to court hearings for their citizenship, and people who are actually doing it the right way. And we have people who aren't even breaking the law. We have people who, regardless of their immigration status or not, are losing their due process. And I want to make a point before I go into that poem I made to wrap up this episode, that if one person loses their due process, and it's covered regardless of if you're a citizen or not, if one person loses their due process, we all lose our due process. And I just want to say that Unite for Veterans, Unite for America is a huge spark. And it's a spirit that we need to carry with us all together. And not just in, the big rallies, but in small little events. And if you feel like you're a blue dot in a red sea, find your fellow blue dots. Find other people like you and form communities, form coalitions, form anti-fascist reading groups. Make sure there's food networks so people don't go hungry. Do what you can, even if it's on the sidelines. I am an injured vet. I use a cane. But I still do stuff that I can. But tomorrow, I'm going to have the med kit. I'm going to have the first aid kits and stuff to make sure that people are safe and to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And if there is someone who gets hurt, that they are taken care of as best as I can. And with that, I'm going to read my poem that I wrote today, called We Stand the Watch Again. When I served, I stood the watch. While you slept in your bed or made sure your children were fed, I stood the watch. Like the brave souls who came before me, who fought from sea to shining sea, I stood the watch. In those years of war brewing on the horizon, with our eyes cast ashore, we stood the watch. But now there is a new series of unrest, a nation in pain, caused by leaders that are scared of our protest. I stand the watch. While the respect and care of our neighbors are torn and bare, we stand the watch. While families are destroyed by hate and bigotry, veterans rise to protect people from sea to shining sea. For those who cannot, no longer, do not worry, we stand the watch. In the streets of our community, while every night our neighbors struggle to sleep soundly, we stand the watch again. Today I'm here to say to everyone that my watch has begun in a new way. I once again stand the watch. I stand today for those who protest in our streets, who had family ripped away, who lost their promised care, who have hope in our country that it can become a better place for all. We stand the watch again. And with that, everybody, I hope for those of you who are going to the rallies, the No Kings rally tomorrow, that you stay safe, stay hydrated, and stay vigilant.